You are listening to the SDSU podcast presented by the East Village Times with your hosts Andre Hagberdian and Paul Garrison. Welcome back, listeners, to the SDSU podcast. I'm your host, Andre Hagberdian. We'll be joined by Paul Garrison shortly. This is episode 82, and it is part 2 of 3 of our coordinator podcast series for San Diego State football. Today, Friday, July 28th, is the first day of fall camp. Practice 1 gets underway a little bit later this afternoon. This episode is our sit-down with offensive coordinator Ryan Lindley. Previous episode was our sit-down with Kurt Maddox, the defensive coordinator. Our following episode will be our conversation with the special teams coordinator, Doug Deacon. But this one is offense. Coach Lindley obviously is starting his first fall camp as an offensive coordinator. He took over as a quarterback's coach halfway through last season. Is still technically the quarterback's coach, but also was elevated to offensive coordinator in January. He obviously has the task of improving the offense that has struggled for the last few years in trying to put points on the board. Obviously, Jalen Maiden is back for his super senior season, but a lot of other pieces have yet to be filled with new starters. So fall camp will have some positional battles to replace, 3 guys that are currently in NFL training camps: Jesse Matthews, Tyrell Shavers, and Alama Uluave. A lot to get to, but here's our conversation that we had with Coach Lindley about a week ago about his thoughts of all the positional units heading into fall camp. Hope you enjoy it. We want to welcome back offensive coordinator Ryan Lindley to the SDSU podcast. How are you doing today, Ryan?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on. Getting geared up. It's our first day officially back in the office, but we've all there's a point halfway through vacation that you're ready for fall camp to start. So we're working hard, getting ready. You're gonna miss some time with the family, but this is what we all gear up and work for. So excited.
Yeah, it's fall camp technically starts in a week or less than a week. The last time we spoke to you was in the middle of spring camp in March. And, you talked a lot about installing your playbook, putting stuff out there, seeing what works, what doesn't work with your group. Since spring camp has ended, how much has your playbook evolved over the last 3 months, 4 months?
Yeah, I think the great thing that we get to do and that our guys do a great job of buying in on, they get to kind of do some of the work in the off season. Obviously, it isn't padded, it isn't physical, but the number one thing I think they get to brush up on is alignments, assignments, different stuff in the passing game, which really was where we had the most changes, so they've done a good job buying into a lot of that, checking in. It's always good to see, guys check in and want to ask questions about referring back to things in the spring game, or, it's good to know guys are dialed in and locked into football, and not that they got to be year round. I think we do a good job of Coach Hall works them hard enough that we want to give them some time to enjoy San Diego and be a young man too. So, but they stayed dialed in. They kind of wanted to evolve, wanted to push some things. And you can tell, because there's stuff that was hard to pick up in the spring that it seems like guys are picking up a lot easier. And when you want to start evolving and when they want to kind of, be in the mix and talk about game planning, you can tell they're learning the stuff that we've talked about and want to kind of continue to grow within the system. So it's great.
Coming out at the end of last season and into spring camp, talking about Jalen Maiden, turnovers was something that was looking to be improved upon. That second quarter of the spring game didn't necessarily ease those concerns. Sure. But what have you seen from him since the spring game that gives you the confidence that he's ready to take the offense to the place that you want it to take into?
Yeah, the biggest thing with Moose is when we talk to him, it's like, don't allow things to snowball. Like, people are gonna make mistakes. I'm not, I'd love for him to have a 2 interception season, and that would be awesome. But I think in a lot of ways, just getting him to understand of like having that next play mentality. So stuff's going to happen, it's going to go awry, and things aren't always going to work out the way they want them to, or he wants them to. But being able to flush it and get to the next play. So that's his big thing. And the other thing I've been putting on him that I think helps there, is he's got to be a leader. He's a senior. He's a COVID senior going into last year of college football. Enjoy that, know that you've earned the respect from your peers, and a part of earning that respect and keeping that respect is, being able to roll with the punches a little bit when stuff doesn't necessarily go your way.
So we're obviously talking about Jalen Mayden because there was a ton of quarterbacks used last year. I mean, where is the rest of the group shaping up? Kyle kind of left spring as the backup. Is that solidified? Where's the competition, Liu, down the road?
Yeah, no, I think, you bring up Kyle, and, he definitely deserves some praise, because I think I didn't really get to see him fully. Once I got here, he had just gotten hurt last season. So I didn't really get to work with him a ton on the field during the fall. He kind of got back once we started bowl prep, but he came back and he kind of developed. He probably had the best spring overall. I think Moose had some of the turnover issues that, we want to clean up. Kyle made the most growth, I should say, from where he was at, picking it up, not really getting a ton of reps last year, and how he just kind of took the reins of that backup job. He did a really good job on that front. Liu's doing a heck of a job right behind him. I mean, it's an interesting situation, especially in this day and age, of two guys that, are in the same class, ultra competitive, super cerebral, really sharp kids, do a phenomenal job being coaches on the field for us. And, they are in the same year in school. They're competing for the backup job. Kyle probably did a little bit better overall throughout the spring, but that doesn't mean Liu isn't right at his heels. And I think Liu's kind of taken that over this offseason and summer. And, I don't anticipate him to turn it down at all. I think he's going to still be chomping at the bit once we get into fall camp. And, the fun piece is you get the young buck in the building. Javance Johnson's been on campus for a little bit now, and him kind of jumping into the mix and getting him worked in this summer, getting things picked up so he can hit fall camp and kind of let his skill set fully take shape. So I'm really excited where the room's at. And I got to tell you, I got two kids that are walk-on quarterbacks for us that I would put them up against anybody at our level. I think DJ Ralph and Tobin Odell, they do a great job. They're phenomenal in the room. I think the quarterback room is kind of a special place where guys there's other rooms where you guys are competing. There's multiple guys that are going to play. There's 2 or 3 linebackers that are going to play every week. So 6 guys can all be competing, bringing the best out of each other. And hey, whatever group rotates through, the quarterback room needs to compete, but also needs to support the one guy that is planning on playing that week. It's a unique situation. And I always think there's kind of a fraternity built into it. So our guys all do a great job. I mean, I think they want to compete. Each guy wants to play, but also understands that, hey, my job is also supporting the guy that's out there on the field right now. So I'm really proud of our guys. We got a really, really fun group of guys, and they're shaping up. I'm really excited for them to cut it loose this fall camp and see how things shake.
Which quarterback ate the most prime rib at Bullies East the other night?
I'm going with Liu.
I was kind of like disappointed in them. So Tobin, actually, speaking of Tobin Odell, saw the beast. I think it caught his eye. He talked a bigger game, though, than I think he really was looking into. He talked about the beast, and then when it came down to it, I think he just ordered the burger, and that was most of our guys just ordered a burger or something. And I just said, guys, you come to Bullies to eat prime rib. Okay. So if it wasn't, in some sort of a professional setting, I might have even tried to take a rap at the beast myself, so it was a little bit of it was a fun day, getting them to see over at Bullies, the Dollins were there, and getting to see those guys and kind of talking some San Diego sports history. I thought it was a great spot for the guys to go and kind of get a reprieve right in the middle of summer.
Turning to the running back room, last year the running game had its fewest yards per game, fewest yards per carry since 2019. What is the key towards getting back to the elite ground game that has kind of been the bread and butter for San Diego State for so long?
And I don't think we were where we wanted to be in the spring, but the thing I'm most proud of our staff and our kids is I think everybody's taking an approach, and we take it in the pass game too right now. We need to meet together more often and make sure everybody's on the same page. I think there were times that each individual might have been doing their job as they thought it was taught, but getting together and understanding, make sure the running back understands that this is how the offensive line works off of a double team. This is the kind of leverage that the tight end is coming off the ball with, helps those guys as runners kind of get together and B, kind of have some second nature to everything they're doing, whether they're making a cut, understanding their reads. So, they've done a good job. They're meeting together this summer, doing different things. I think the cohesion of the group, I've just been excited to where it's at coming off of spring. I think there was an aspect even for us as coaches. Hey, like this thing happened fast. We do spring early. Guys were just trying to kind of make sure they did their job. The next step that we are posing, both as coaches and for our players, is, hey, now let's all help each other do our job better and understand what that job is and where I help. Guys are having a more conceptual understanding of what we're doing on offense, and I kind of hope that's helped our guys be better runners and better blockers.
Many people are envisioning a thunder and lightning duo, when you look at Keenan and Jalen Armstead. Is that something the staff has kind of pictured for the season, or is there a different philosophy?
I don't think you ever want to like peg guy, pigeonhole guys where they're at, but you do look at the same time, you got to look at what guys' strengths are, and I really look at, I think we're fortunate because the room's somewhat split. We got a group of guys, not just Jalen, but Lucky Sutton, Lucky Avenger's a bigger back for us. Martin Blake's kind of that in-betweener, which I always joke. I say, you're a part of both groups. You can be the pounder, but you also got some wiggle to you and you can catch the ball. So, with Keenan, Cam Davis, Sheldon Canley, we got a good group of guys that also are kind of that, like you say, the thunder lightning, I think is kind of a sexy term. So we use it, but at the same time, we're going to put guys in positions to be successful by doing what their skill set allows them to do. So are they pigeonholed? Can Keenan only run outside and do things on the edge? No, he's going to run our inside zone game and all that different stuff too. But, I'm really excited for what each one of those guys brings to the table. Now I've challenged that group of, hey, I don't want it to just be two guys. I'd love for there to be the Thunder to step up and be the bell cow back, or the Lightning to step up and say, shoot, you're the guy that we got to have touch the ball 25 times a game. But right now, the way that group's working, it's a really, really strong group, culturally with their core, and Keenan's kind of the elder statesman in there, but they do a heck of a job. And I'm just kind of charging them like, hey, I want to see one guy step up and decide like, hey, I'm that guy. I'm the guy that needs to get the ball and be kind of the main feature guy in this room.
You mentioned obviously Lucky Sutton, a local guy, so there's a lot of buzz around him from Aztec fans. When we talked to you after one of the spring practices, you mentioned you wanted him to get his pads under him a little bit more, run with more purpose, moving his feet a little bit faster. How is he taking that coaching, and how is he looking heading into fall camp?
Yeah, I mean, he's great. And I'll tell you, to be honest with you, I'm a local guy myself, and I'm harder. Whether it's I get after Trey White in the weight room as much as I get after my guys on offense, because I just think when you're a local guy and you play here at San Diego State, well, you better be you better be a freaking baller.
Yeah.
You're playing in front of your family, in front of your hometown. You better have a little bit more going on. That's just my thought from obviously my time here. But I think Lucky's done a good job of answering the call. You still look at him, and he's such a big freaking kid, and he's so strong. You forget that he just finished up his first year in college, so you got to realize that some of that, like, it is coming along for him. It's our job as coaches to make sure it comes along faster, but it is coming along for him, and we're excited how he's taking that coaching and is moving along with it.
Fullback position. Last year, Martin Blake played a part of that in a limited role. But Nick Gardenera, he was listed in the depth chart. You also brought in a preferred walk-on, Leo Kemp, who we had on the podcast to play that role. What can we expect from that position?
I almost look back since I was here, it's kind of become kind of a mascot of sorts for the Aztec offense, So there's gonna be some things we're doing differently. It's yet to be seen how those guys perform, how much we will use them. That's kind of the biggest thing I've charged both of them with was, hey, as much as you guys can take on and we can be successful with, and I'd love to get you guys out there and shorten some necks as much as possible. But we'll kind of go forward with that and see how those guys can take that challenge and the rigors of fall camp here. And, for a guy like Leo, you're jumping in, you're playing a physical position as a young kid. That's tough. I think Nick has done a phenomenal job of answering the bell there and stepping up, and really grew leaps and bounds, I thought, in the spring at that position. So really excited for him to definitely lead that charge in the fall, and hopefully Leo follows suit and pushes him.
And you finished spring camp with 6 returning tight ends from last year. 2 of them are gone, one via the transfer portal, one of them retired. We all know Mark Redmond. Seen a lot of Jay Rudolph in the past. Cam Harple, Logan Tanner. They look to be more involved. How would you just evaluate those tight ends and using them in the offense in 2023?
Yeah, no, I mean, we definitely want the thing I like most about a lot of those guys is they're all pretty versatile and multiple. Cam's a guy that can be on the ball, can be off the ball. I thought really stepped up in the spring and showed his receiving prowess and has put on a lot of good weight. I mean, he's coming through. He's had a really good summer. I'm excited for him going in fall camp. Logan Tanner's another one of those guys like Lucky. I think there's times that we get on him a little bit. We want him to grow up faster than he is, but he is still finishing his first year at, off to college, away from home. And, he's done a good job too. I think developing physically. He's done a great job with Coach Hall in the weight room. Max DiFilippo is the guy that we brought in from Orange Coast College here, Southern California kid to bring in. I think he'll provide some good depth for us there. And Des Melton is a kid from Louisville that we brought in that he got recruited here out of high school. I think he was a guy out of Arizona that, Coach Deacon was the tight ends coach at the time, and he wanted him bad. And, he decided to go to Louisville and go away from home a little bit for as he saw it, some bigger time football, and played really well, had some good snaps, and has kind of come in for us. And you can tell those guys, the transfer portal guys that are older, that have some, savvy to them, like he has picked up our culture, I think, faster than anybody that has come in here. Coach Hall raves about him a little bit at times, like, hey, there's a guy like he had his acclimation period, but I think he knows what's at stake here and has gone kind of full bore, cutting it loose the rest of the summer now that he's bought in and understands what's expected of him each and every day. I think he'll come in and really help push each one of those guys in that room. So like the running back room, it's hard to say, like, Mark obviously had a pretty good year last year, and, Jay's done his job and been a really good role player for us. It's hard to say after that which one of those guys is going to step up and be the next guy to the table for us. So the one positive for us is, like, I don't know, but I'm excited about a lot of them in there. So hopefully they compete, push each other, and bring the best out, and the cream will rise to the top in the end.
Yeah, obviously with Mark, he was an all-conference second-team guy last year. His numbers weren't, breathtaking, 21 catches, 233 yards, 2 touchdowns. From the perspective of the offense featuring tight ends more, you would think those numbers would go up.
Yeah.
But as the play caller, how do you kind of balance, between force feeding him or scheming him open so that when the play is called, he's the guy that's open and Jalen is going to go to?
No doubt. I mean, it's and talking through with the quarterback, I think, is the number one thing. I still remember vividly my sophomore year with Vincent Brown. Coach Borges took me through some similar things of like, hey, there is a point. I think Vincent at one point 6 weeks into the season led the country in receptions, but he was like, it's not a good thing because you are missing out on other open receivers trying to force him the ball, So I think, kind of going through that with Moose. Moose, though, being a 6-year guy, being an older guy, I think he understands that as a little more cerebral than that on that level. So there's going to be some things we feature, but I always look at it as like it's players, not plays. And for me, it's my job within those plays to feature the players. So there are certain plays that Moose knows, like, hey, yeah, this is called to get Mark the ball or want to get Mark the ball. Obviously, if he's double covered, whatever it is, we got to move on in the progression. But there are other plays that are called that Mark is running a route that he may not be primary and sometimes maybe taking a little bit of, window dressing to show the defense we're working one way and get somebody open on the other side. So we try to do a good job of not kind of overdoing that. But I think the biggest thing with Mark, when you look at his season statistics last year, it's how much that jumped up the last 6 games of the year. I think like Moose, he made honorable mention honors because of really the half season he had in conference. Mark was the same way. And I've kind of told him he needs to continue to pick up from there and really start the season off. We play some pretty heavy hitters out the gate. And, he's a guy that we see as a big time player that I've said it before. He's got to make the big time plays for us in those games when he's called upon.
In your predecessor's offense, the second tight end was basically used as a fullback, primarily blocking. In your offense, do you see that second tight end being used more in the passing game?
I think there's a time and season for everything. There's times that guy definitely, is going to want to be a guy that you get him off the ball. He doesn't necessarily have to be the heavy hitter on the line of scrimmage. You can split him out, get him out in space a little bit more and do some things. Now, there are some times we want to move that guy around off the ball and find a way for him to, insert and throw it in there like a fullback, So I think that's the beauty for me of the tight end position is those guys can be so multiple. So that's one thing you love to see about, like I said, a guy like Cam Harpole who's kind of really taking some steps this spring. He is that guy that I don't see as like he goes in, there's a tendency. Having worked on defense, there's certain personnels that like, okay, when 84 enters the game, whoever that, this guy, okay, now it's 80% pass. This guy's a freaking receiver for him. There's another guy, 88 enters the game. That's he's a lineman, and when he's in there running the ball. I think we got a group of guys that, for the most part, all of them bring enough to the table in both areas that we can feel really confident in putting them in multiple positions.
I think it's fair to say with the wide receivers, they seem to be the most unknown of the group. outside of Makai Shaw, not many guys have had production at the FBS level. So, there's competition for the second and third spots. I mean, how's that played over the summer, and
Yeah.
who's standing out to you in that group?
When I mention like the work you're able to get in the summer, I mean, that's the group that I think can see the most jump, the most leaps and bounds. Because obviously, a lot of what you do, even with pads on, you got to be a tough player playing receiver. I'm not saying that, but you can work a ton of your craft without being ultra physical. So seeing how guys have bought in, getting a chance to work with Coach Krause more, it's been really good to see. And same thing there. It's kind of a mixture. I think a guy like Breon Penny has been behind guys like Jesse Matthews and Tyrell Shavers. And you want to see him. He is an older guy. You want to see him kind of step up and show some of that maturity, when he gets a chance to in his numbers called. Guys like Josh Nicholson or younger, that they've seen those guys for a little bit, and we need them to grow up fast. That's kind of a theme that we're going to say of like, hey, you young guys that haven't played, we need you to grow up and gain that experience quickly. So it's a mix in that group, man. And really, like you said, like there is a bit of an unknown, and I look at that as a positive because I'm really excited to see the fact that like I think so many of them are on the precipice of really breaking out and stepping up. It'll be really exciting to see, if we talk again in 3 months here, which guy you're talking about as like our stud wide receiver that's a go-to guy. Because I just look at it like someone will step up. Like someone or multiple people will step up. It's a matter of who at this point, which, the positive thing for me on, as a play caller and guys getting ready for us, guys don't necessarily know because we got a lot of stuff that's new and, isn't necessarily going to be have some tendencies or be shown early. But we're excited to be able to kind of showcase those guys and see who steps up early.
One guy I think that everyone's really excited about, Coach mentioned, obviously going to the transfer portal, Jalil Tucker coming back home, listed on the roster today. And how confident are you in his ability to be able to, make that switch and actually come and maybe be that guy that you're talking about who breaks out?
So I think it's always exciting to get a guy that comes back home. And, I think the biggest thing for him as he's making the transition is there's going to be a developmental period there. There's going to be a buffer zone, a period there where, you're getting back in the swing of things. But I think the biggest thing when you look at, 10-5 isn't walking around everywhere, on campus here for us. So there are going to be some things that obviously his skill set begs to get some immediate attention. So we're looking forward to him kind of hitting it fast and getting started. And, that's one of the great things. And that's why we hired, Jonathan Krause here, because he's a guy that's done it at a high level, done it at the professional level, has been around some phenomenal developers, and is one of the best that I've been around, in my short time around the game, and developing receivers and really kind of getting in those guys' mindsets. And I think if anybody can make the flip for him or make the switch for him and coach him through that quickly, it's our guy, Coach Krause.
Tyson Berry is one of your incoming freshmen. We spoke to Tyson over a year ago when he first committed, and he told us that coaching staff saw him more as a running back in kind of the Jordan Bird mold. He's a small guy with a lot of bursts, a lot of flash. On a signing day and on the roster today, he's listed as a wide receiver. Do you envision him more as a wide receiver in your offense?
Yeah, and we look back, and I remember talking to Coach Horton when he had came on and he kind of stepped away, and the biggest thing like he kept using it like he's the human joystick. He can play kind of everywhere. There's some multiplicity, and the way I say it, like there's some multiplicity of we want our running backs to do some of the things that our wide receivers do as well. We want our slot receivers to do some of the things that running backs do. I think I've heard a guy that I have a lot of respect for in kind of the football evaluation sphere is if you can have some positionless players, not to say that they don't have a position that they are honed in on, but like a Deebo Samuel has kind of made that thing sexy, lately is like he is a positionless player. You don't know if he's going to play running back, wide receiver. And that's kind of my thing when I talk about the tight ends. I don't think we have a ton of tight ends that are like, okay, that is a wide inline tight end. He's stiff. He's just a blocker. I think we got guys that are positionless tight ends. They can play wide. They can play off the ball, do different things. Tyson hopefully kind of hops in and does some of those same things for us, And I mentioned all those, lightning guys that we're talking about at running back. That's the biggest thing that I've been excited about their jump, catching the football too. So, we kind of look at all those guys. Makai Shaw plays in that spot for us too of like, hey, you can be that jack of all trades guy to do a lot of different things that we can get you out in space and use that athletic ability to get you to make guys expose the defenders in space.
Moving on to the last group we haven't talked about yet, the offensive line. We know about their struggles last year. You lost 2 starters. One was a 3-year starter at center, Alamo Olave. He talked a lot last year about having a big part in setting up the protection and the blocking schemes. Now that you're going to have a first-time center starting, is that role going to go back to the quarterbacks, or how is that going to play out?
Center to me is like the quarterback position up front. I think the guy who's the backup has to be so dialed in. I think there's other backups that at times can kind of get lost in I'm a play away, and that play seems pretty far away. Center to me, because you're so close to the ball, like if you go in, it is go time. There is no, hey, if the new receiver, the third string receiver goes in and plays out wide, he may not touch the ball for 20 plays. You go in at center, you got to be ready to go. So, I think the guys that we've had that have been backups have even had some playing time behind Alma in the past. I think they've positioned themselves and geared themselves up to be ready to go. So kind of excited for those guys to step up. I think that's another position we kind of want to see solidify itself and see how that kind of competition works out here in the fall.
We talked with Coach Goff recently on the podcast, and he gave us a really good report on the offensive line, the various players trying to move together as one, and it very similar to what you described, not being individuals, but being together and understanding how they can move as a unit. But regardless of how that shakes out and who starts where, etc., are there things that you can do as a play designer, as the offensive coordinator, to kind of support and help what is going to be like an expected learning curve?
I'm just a big believer of everything we do, we need to make sure it's simple. It's as simple as it can be, but no simpler. There's a point that if you make it too simple, defenses are so complex that they may out scheme you and confuse you on up front. But I think for us though, we can't confuse our own players. We got to put them in positions to where they can kind of plug and play. And that's the beauty to me too of we have some guys that can flow and rotate up front too. And part of that understanding thing conceptually is understanding that, hey, I know what to do at center and right guard. I know what to do at center and left guard. I know what to do at left guard and left tackle, because you're working in concert with those guys so often. You kind of have to know their job as you know your own job. So that's kind of been the fun thing to see as we kind of put the depth chart together. It's like, hey, understanding some of these guys that, man, he can kind of float and plug and play. It isn't necessarily a solid in stone concrete thing. Well, if this guy goes down, he's next up. Sometimes the next guy best up that position, maybe taking a guy from another spot, floating him in there and working somebody else up. So that's kind of our best thing that we've looked at, not only up front, but really with the rest of our skill players too, is we need to find a way to put the best 11 guys on the field. And obviously that goes with the best 5 up front. And, if somebody goes down, then the sixth best guy needs to find his way into that mold. However, we need to shuffle it to get across.
You've spoken a lot about your process as an offensive coordinator and the people that you've depended upon for advice, things of that nature. As you're heading into your first fall camp, what's maybe some of the best advice that you've been given from some of those mentors and friends of yours?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I catch myself every day, and I even tell the staff, you need to hold me to it, is keep it simple. I think understand that it's still about the players going out and executing. Some of the problems, sometimes you spend so much time between spring ball and this time, you're out recruiting, you're talking to different guys about different schemes and what they do at different places. You watch NFL, you watch different things. You talk to so many people that it becomes like there's so many things philosophically that you like and you want to do. And then when you get down to it, you got to look at, okay, we only have a finite amount of time, amount of reps, amount of energy to get out of our kids. We need to expend that energy on the things that we do best. If you do a lot of stuff a little bit, you ain't gonna be very good at anything. So I mean, the number one thing is finding ways to keep it simple, keep it within the wheelhouse of what our guys can do, and kind of let it build from there.
Last question for you, Coach. We've asked you about all the position groups, a lot of players. Is there one thing that we haven't asked about that you're excited about heading into fall camp?
Man, and you know what? I just think it's all, everything's leading up to this, and I even tell guys like Moose is that guy. I give him a hard time. Like Moose is the guy that I think Moose wants to get to Saturday, and not every guy loves practice or loves workouts or loves a different guy. Moose getting to that place, I'm excited. I think Moose has been cranking his dial up the closer we get to fall camp because he knows that Saturdays are coming. So I think in general, I use Moose as an example, but everybody, I think, understanding that, hey, the excitement, the urgency, everything cranks up a notch here now that we get into fall camp. Spring ball is a little bit about development. We want to be urgent when we're on the football field, but there's some teaching, there's some understanding. We get into fall, man, it's about to be real here in close to a month. So let's get going and let's hit the ground running.
August 26th is, less than 5 weeks away. So we're almost getting to that Saturday to not just get Moose excited, but everybody that follows San Diego State.
Absolutely.
Coach, we want to thank you as always for your time. We appreciate you chatting with us and giving us some insight. We're looking forward, as I said, to August 26th, and practices are coming up. So hopefully Paul and I will make it out there and see some practices as well before first game.
Awesome. Well, enjoy the rest of the summer. We'll see you out on the field here soon.
That was Paul and I's interview with Coach Lindley. Hopefully you guys enjoyed hearing Coach's thoughts about, the various positional groups within the offense, his philosophy, what he's looking to get from fall camp, and some of the positional battles that is going to play out over the next 4 weeks before we get to game 1 on August 26th. As always, we appreciate you guys listening in. Stay tuned for our next episode, which would be our sit down with special teams coordinator Doug Deacon, part 3 of 3 of our coordinator podcast series. Stay tuned for that, and we will talk to you guys next time. You are listening to the SDSU podcast presented by the East Village Times with your hosts Andre Hagberdian and Paul Garrison.